So over the course of December, there really was only one frequently asked question that we ran into on regularly, and that was just about an outlook for 2026. So the bottom line is that, for the year of 2026, I'm fairly optimistic. I mean, we have a situation where, the economy is doing well. It looks to be accelerating, at least in terms of the US, which will, of course, help Canada. Investor sentiment has been skeptical down to outright negative over the course of the last year, which is, pretty interesting given the fact we did see positive returns again. We also see that the quantitative patterns and technical patterns are all supportive. And we do know that through various deregulatory and market-based measures that, liquidity continues to rise. There's more money in the system. There's more oxygen available to help generate returns, so to speak. So I am overall optimistic. However, I always want to, be upfront in saying that, look, we are at a time right now where volatility is heightened, and that there's always a wall of worry out there, right? First of all, it is the U.S. midterm election year. Now, that is historically has not produced great returns. However, it's also extremely rare that we see a correction like we did in April, preceding a U.S. midterm election year. So what is that going to do to the cycle? We don't know, but we do need to be aware that that it is a midterm election year, and make sure that we're being aware of that. There's also other worries out there, the AI bubble worry. There's concerns around what would happen if the Supreme Court overturned Trump's tariffs, et cetera, et cetera. And I did want to emphasize here is that even though we may have to go through a lot of volatility to get to that positive return, that just like we did in 2025, is that there's an old Wall Street saying, and that's basically is that bull markets climb a wall of worry. And that if you didn't have the worries, you wouldn't have investors who are afraid. And if they're afraid, they don't invest. And so if people aren't invested, it leaves upside. The biggest concern you have for a bull market is when the Federal Reserve or the central banks begin to restrict liquidity, and you see investors get quite optimistic. And we're nowhere near those two conditions. So although I do expect a bumpy year, I do expect things to be very positive as we climb this wall of worry, as we have from April. So looking forward, I think it's one of these situations where we don't want to take it too personally when it's up. We don't want to take it too personally when it's down. We're just going to keep our eyes firmly in the windshield and driving within the speed limit, and making sure that that we're keeping our eye on the big picture, because that's really where the prize is. So I can, again, happy to get into more detail on any of this 2026 outlook or any of the things that we've talked about in this video. But again, bottom line is do expect a good year. Maybe bumpier than maybe we would have gotten used to back in the 2010s, but this seems to be the new reality of the 2020s, and we may as well embrace it. Thank you.